Hey, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Brutal Truth About Sales and Selling podcast. Hey, we're all here near the end of the year. And today I'm going to be talking about the number one thing that's going to determine whether a deal is going to close by the end of the year or not. I posted a video on LinkedIn about this. You may have seen it. I'll be also posting them on my YouTube channel. Just search Brian Burns on YouTube or check out the show notes below. Just swipe up or hit the details button on the podcast, and it'll show you all the show notes with the links to all my partners and the products and tools that I use to just crush it. Next to you, folks, next to you, my friends, my salespeople, my buddies in sales. Number two is tools. That's what really has helped me crush it. That and you guys sharing the word about the brutal truth. Hey, one thing about the classes, I have a Black Friday sale, which extends to the end of November here. So it'll be black whatever, the last day of November. And what I'm including is, or not going to include after that or next year, is the free one-on-ones. And the free one-on-ones is basically we talk about a particular deal anonymously, not your name, not your company, not your product, but we talk about the situation, the problem that you're running into, how to resolve it, and how to prevent it from happening in the future. And this is all free as long as I can include it in the course. There's been overwhelming need for that, and it's really taken up a lot of time of mine. I love doing it, but I only have so much time to do it. So I most likely will not be including that in the course in January, but anybody who signs up between now and November for any of the courses at b2brevenue.com under training, just sign up. You get a full year access. That includes not just all the content, but also the one-on-ones and 1 hour every other week for office hours. So the ones who have been in it already for a year, you're going to get 25 hours of real world case studies. And I prepare an additional lesson every other week about what I see as far as the gap, about what people are grabbing and getting and what else I'm doing as kind of an update. So it becomes not only content, but community and coaching. So check it out. Make sure you sign up before the end of November. Make it your little gift to you. And think about it. If you just need a meeting, I bet you'll get 300 times more meetings. If you're working the complex deal, you're going to win more deals. You're going to make the deals bigger and faster. I got a note this week from one person that says, I'm done for the year. Due to your course, I got all these deals done in November. My manager's like, what the hell are you doing? He won't tell him. I go, good, don't tell him. Keep it a little secret between you and I. So today I've got Steve Woods back on the podcast. Steve Woods is the CTO of Nudge.Ai. They're doing some amazing work and trying to automate the life of the sales rep, not only for scouring the internet about things to focus on, but also how to keep updating the CRM for us and prioritizing things that are people who are most likely to be open to research. Also, I check out pipedrive.com, Pipedrive with the coupon code Brutal Truth, which also works for Nudge.ai. You get 1 month free. They've come up with an enterprise version. So now you can segment your data. So like if you have a virtual assistant and you go, I don't want them seeing all this great stuff. I want them cleaning up this stuff. And that's what I do. I segment it out. I've automated my steps and it's just turned into a machine. I know. Do you want a revenue machine? Check out pipedrive.com. Also, check out last week I had Katie, the president of Discover.org. They're doing some great work. Get your manager to buy Discover.org. It'll save you so much time. What I'm hearing is 20 to 30% of our time is spent researching. This is not good. We need to be talking to people. We need to be moving our deals forward. And to do that, we need information. We can't be just searching the internet. We can either hire people to do it, outsource it, or buy it. And buying it is always the cheapest one. So check out the interview with Katie. Let's get into this interview, and I'll sum it up at the end. Hey, Steve, welcome back to the show. As a way of getting started, give us a little update on yourself.
It's great to be back. Yes, thanks for having me back. It's been a fun season for us. Definitely seeing a lot of pickup on relationship intelligence in the market as people start to really think about how to push their understanding of what's going on in their sales funnels forward a notch, and it's been a lot of exciting conversations and a lot of exciting work with customers. It's been a fun summer fall for us.
Cool. And what are you hearing about like activity logging? Has that been a hot topic on your end?
You know what it is? It sort of struck us a while ago that in 2018, hey, that should be a solved problem. And we kept hearing again and again and again, it's not. It's this fascinating thing where it's almost a religion, right? Everyone says, yes, we must do activity logging. And then you get this funny dynamic where every rep hates it, and everyone in sales management feels they're not getting out of it what they think they ideally would get out of it. So we keep kind of bludgeoning ourselves with this, and it turned into some really interesting conversations where we just sort of worked with some customers, took a step back and said, what are we trying to accomplish here? And is there a better way of thinking about it? And that just sparked some fascinating discussions that gave so much more clarity of what we're trying to accomplish and why and how we can get there.
Yeah, and I always see the same math equation that people put. They put your goal, then you figure out the average deal size, then your win rate, and they try and reverse engineer it into activities. And, you know, I've been doing this a long time, and I've never seen that work on anything above a transactional sale, like a cartridge renewal or even like a software renewal. But people are in love with it. Managers love it. And I think it kind of came out of the dashboard. You know, once Salesforce had a dashboard, managers went from managing and leading into accounting. And they kind of use these entries as a signal of what's working or not working. And I keep telling them, you realize you're going to get what you ask for. It's not going to be what you want. You know, so
Absolutely.
Because what do they really want? They want revenue.
Yeah, and I think if you look at what happens in anything more considered than the cartridge renewal, there's so many pieces that you need to figure out in there. And every time that we worked with sales leaders and said, okay, let's just stop, let's pause, let's take a step back, let's figure out what you want to answer, and it was fascinating. There were a set of things that they wanted to answer that ended up kind of merging into this mess, and none of them got answered. And I think at a simple level, you know, the first of those is, are they doing the work?
Yes. Right?
Like, are they showing up, and are they doing their outreach? Are they doing it at the right volumes compared to their peers? Are they getting any results? You know, do people ever pick up the phone, take a meeting with them, or respond to their emails? And that's, you know, that's valid as step one. You know, they've got a pulse, but really doesn't go beyond that in terms of, okay, they've done the raw effort. Are they actually moving the deals forward? And I think that's where, you know, your comment on, okay, can we move this beyond the cartridge renewal really comes in. And I think that the second piece that we kept seeing was, okay, great, you're getting into these conversations, you're doing the work. Point two, are you dropping any balls? The deals that you have, once there is that first connect and there's a conversation, you haven't got that into it's not an opportunity that's going to close this quarter. You need to keep working it along and really sort of find that crack to get in. And a lot of times that part of the sales funnel ends up leaky just because you kind of drop the ball. You forget, and suddenly it's been 2 or 3 weeks, and you don't have engagement with that company, and you don't have the right set of relationships, and you've kind of lost touch. Your raw activity could look fine, but when you look at it in terms of accounts that you're going after, you start to see a couple of them where you've forgotten about them. You had that first connect, and now you've dropped the ball, and that's never going to progress down the deal cycle.
And I think managers want everything to fit into their process, and I don't think people buy by your process. And certainly with a junior rep who doesn't really understand how to drive it through, they do the demo, the presentation, the proposal, and then the endless follow-up. And they don't understand that it gets stuck there, that the person they're talking to has no economic power.
Yeah. And that really is, the sort of the other pieces that we saw coming out of this really got to, your point there, Brian, on sort of getting the right people and having the raw economic power. Point one, which I think is become a major conversation in sales leadership today, is single threading. Are you single threaded in the deals that you think you have in your pipeline? And so many times the answer is yes. You've got one person, maybe they're director level person, they're super excited about what you offer. That deal's going nowhere. That person is going to tell you amazing things about your product and get no deals done. So you've got to build the relationships around that and get out of the single-threaded situation, which is extremely hard to tell. If you're just looking at raw activity, you're not looking at relationships, you're not going to get there. You're not going to understand whether there's more than one strong relationship in a deal. That is going to be extremely hard to tease out of that raw information noise, but it's the most critical factor to figure out, is this deal at risk?
Yeah, and I think even going back to the activities, I think managers look at the, say, 50 calls a day. They think that each one of them has an equal likelihood of buying. And I don't think anything could be further from the truth, because when I talk to sales development reps, the best get 2 meetings a week. That means out of 250 outreaches through the phone, they're getting less than 1% success. Now, I got to believe there'd be a smarter way to go from 1% to 5 or 10 by focus on the people that they most likely can have a conversation with, the people they're most likely connected to, or connected to your other customers who are lookalike your other customers.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got to be smarter about the initial point into the deal. And I think for the initial point, maybe there's a temptation to use that kind of 1% math and really see where it gets you. And the hit rate there kind of matters. But the interesting thing, once you get into the deal, and if you get in because you see an insight or because there's an opportunity to be introduced, wonderful, your hit rate's going to go up. But okay, now you're in a conversation. The next part of any complex sales cycle is getting that buying committee all engaged and structured. And we've seen a lot of struggle there, because you'll have reps that are very good, let's say, at the user conversation. You can get a user very excited about the thing that you're offering, but they struggle to have the economic conversation with the financial buyer. They struggle to talk to IT. They struggle to talk to finance and procurement. And those deals might look great, right? You've got at least one strong relationship. Maybe they've even got past the single-threaded problem. They've got 2 or 3 strong relationships with user buyers, but they're not building the relationships with finance, operations, IT, security, procurement. And so those deals are going to look decent in the pipeline. If you stay at the raw activity level, they look great. If you stay at the single-threaded level, they look okay. You need to go even one step further there and say, okay, let's break this out by the level and role of conversations and relationships that my reps are building, and figure out if that shows me any risk patterns in the pipeline or opportunities to coach individual reps and move them further. So you can kind of see this logging spectrum go from raw data to this much more nuanced insight. And I think when people just throw okay, let's log everything as raw tasks and activity in the CRM system, it fails to get where they hope that it's going to get.
Yeah, and I think there's a huge market for this automation of this logging data, because it's an enormous amount of work. And if managers are looking at just the dashboard instead of talking to people, and I think the single-threaded problem is the number one thing that tells me a deal's going to slip. Because if they're not engaging you at multiple levels and you're not engaging them, that deal is probably stuck in someone's email box and they forward it to a manager saying, oh, I think this is a great idea. And the manager has no idea what you're talking about. And I think it's both an educational standpoint of educating reps on how companies buy, and the other part is connecting with the other people and knowing that you have to. Because if you don't do it, you're relying on your user buyer or your champion to do it for you, and they have a whole lot less sales experience than you do.
And are less motivated. And I think you're hitting on one of the really interesting points there with sort of the dashboard versus the humanity of sales leadership. And metrics are great, right? Metrics are amazing at pointing us in the right direction in terms of where to focus. And so if you've got activity logging, that level 1 activity logging, and it tells me if people are doing the work, and I have a rep who's not doing the work. Well, now my next step as a person is to go kick that person's butt and say, hey, I'm coaching you. You need to either do the work or find a new place of employment. But that next step of being a leader and a guide and a coach is critical. Same for if you're single-threaded. The analytics, if you have that understanding of the relationships that you have and the relationship intelligence tells you whether you're single-threaded, that will point you in 100 deals in a funnel. It will say, go dig in on these 3 deals because they're at risk. But your next step there is, hey, rep, let's dig in. Let's understand. Let's understand why. Let's understand that it needs to happen. But analytics is always that focusing engine to allow you as a sales leader to have the right conversations that are the most optimal use of your time. Analytics doesn't preclude that leadership ability, it just focuses it.
Yeah, and if you make it self-reporting, you're going to get what you ask for, not what's real. And I think that's the strength of this relationship component of the forecasting is because the rep will always say, oh, they love us. Well, I don't know what that means. Have you talked to them? Do you know their name? Have you met them? When do they feel this deal can take place? What else do they need? What are they up against? How long does it typically take? And if you're a VP of sales, there's certainly a pattern to most of your deals. Certain people always get involved. Certain people sometimes get involved. If you don't have these must-have involvement in a deal, you know it's going to slip.
Absolutely. And what's interesting that we've seen as you start to kind of move down this spectrum from raw activity logging to understanding the relationships to looking at single threading problems and looking at the conversations, what ends up happening is because sales leadership has that data, the team knows that leadership has that data, and they self-manage. They know that they're going to get called on the carpet if they're single-threaded. They know that they're going to get called on the carpet if they don't have relationships with security and IT and finance and procurement or whoever they need, but the more tough conversations. And A, they self-manage. B, it forms a foundation for some fascinating conversations. We had one, and we were working with a VP of sales, and she's like, yeah, I use it for discount approval. What are you talking about? And it turned out what she was doing with her team, when they came for a discount, she'd say, okay, well, let's look at that account. Let's look at the relationships you've built. Oh, well, you're not at the C level. You haven't talked to finance. No, you haven't earned your right to throw a discount in front of them. Go do the work. And it changed the behavior just because you've got this raw data log, you've got this relationship data log, you can look at that as a foundation of how that account is doing. The reps know it, you know it, the reps know that you know it, and they change their behavior.
And also, I think reps got to understand that you need to talk to more than one person at the account. And if that one person doesn't want you to, that's typically a red flag that deal is not going to go anywhere. And that person is trying to do something that they don't have any other support for.
Absolutely. And I think we're hearing some really interesting patterns. I think if you look back, 5 or 10 years, there's definitely the mantra of see or flee, right? Like if you're not talking to the C-level folks, the deal is very problematic was the general sense. I think that's changed a lot from what we're seeing as we sort of look across the spectrum and say, okay, where do these relationships actually happen when the deals sort of start progressing? And oftentimes the C-level folks are saying, I need a product that delivers on these points of value, but I need a product that my team is going to like and use and adopt. So if there isn't that groundswell of enthusiasm around it, that's a red flag for me as a buyer, as a C-level buyer. So oftentimes the successful deals actually become very multi-threaded at lower levels first and then move up. So as a rep, you're building this groundswell rather than saying, hey, C-level person, here's the economic reason to make this purchase. Now jam it down the throats of your frontline folks. That mindset has died on the C-level buyer side. So as a rep, you've got to get that groundswell to happen across an organization, oftentimes before you're able to move the relationships up the chain.
Yeah, I concur on that completely, because too often I think anybody who's an executive who's made a decision without the people who use the product support and spent the money and they don't use it, certainly on the enterprise side before SaaS came out, they'd have egg on their face. They'd be like, I spent money, nobody's using it, it was a waste. And at least with SaaS, you can just cancel the contract, and you've wasted a year's of money or a month of money. And I think that top-down total sales process is almost dead. You can come in at the top, but if you don't have the people who are going to use the product and make them successful with the product, they're definitely not going to renew.
Yeah, and I think too, if you look at it in terms of what's being assessed, oftentimes these products or services that are being proposed, they have to fit into a complicated environment. You've got very, very intelligent frontline folks, whether you're selling to technologists or lawyers or bankers or doctors. You've got intelligent frontline folks that are living and breathing the day-to-day life of frontline operations. And you might have a C-level person that gets the high-level picture, but a lot of those leaders nowadays are realizing that they don't know the nuances of that frontline work and how the problems actually get solved. And so you combine that with the fact that, as you mentioned, Brian, sort of in today's world, there's an expectation that you can get your hands dirty, you can try stuff, you can see how it fits into your existing environment and figure out if it's going to go beyond the demo. Is it going to solve the real problems with the nuances and all of the hairy bits that reality brings? And so that, I think, is the economic motivator beyond sort of the feel-good, I want my team to be happy. You want your team to be happy as a C-level leader, but you also want to know that the solution is going to solve the real, hairy, nuanced challenges that you have. And only the frontline people, when they get their hands dirty, are able to answer that. You can't answer that from the C-suite.
Yeah. And are you seeing users of Nudge finding it as far as like forecast triage, trying to take the morass of that list of deals that are supposed to close this quarter and put them in the order of likelihood of closing, ones that may be in trouble, giving them, the leaders and the reps, signals about what they should be doing?
Yeah, you know what's been interesting is the conversation has started to kind of span the entire gap from raw activity logging to sales strategy, pipeline management. If you look at that spectrum all the way from reps are doing the work, reps are staying in contact with the deals that they need to stay in touch with, reps are not single-threaded across these deals, reps are having the right conversations with the right roles with the right buyers, you now have this spectrum from raw activity logging to relationship logging to intelligent relationship logging that looks at roles and levels to the pipeline that is the foundation of. So you can now, we're seeing our customers do this, which is fascinating. You can zoom in and zoom out and say, how's the pipeline doing? Oh, well, these deals are at risk. Well, why are they at risk? Oh, because this rep seems to have challenges with this kind of conversation. This other rep seems to get single-threaded in all of their deals. Well, why? Oh, well, this rep's not doing the work, so we know how to fix that. This rep is struggling with finance conversations, so we're going to coach them on that. And by zooming in and zooming out across this whole activity logging spectrum, you're able to deploy your own leadership insights in the right areas. Crack the whip when people are just being lazy. Help them focus when they're just kind of dropping balls and getting single-threaded. Coach them and guide them if they struggle with types of conversations. And start to kind of share all of those insights. And through that, continually improve the team's ability to build pipeline.
And that's it, because on the marketing side, all the ABM, account-based marketing stuff, it's all about predictive, starting with people who know about you, come to your site. Then who is in market? What signals are they sending as far as the content they're reading, the sites they're visiting, the things they're searching for? And then who's most likely to come into market based off of demographics, firmographics, technology they're already using, size, all of this stuff. But on sales, I talk to reps. I go, okay, if you divide your accounts into A, Bs, and Cs, they kind of look at me like, what are you talking about? Well, they're not all equal. The people who come to you, who show interest, who are evaluating your competitors, those are hot leads. People who have the pain and have some curiosity, those are pretty good. The people who should be in market, and if they only knew about you and knew what they could do with you, those are pretty good too, but those are Bs. And C's are the ones that you have no idea, they have no idea, and you'll get to them when you can. I think with AI, it can help us prioritize, create those A, Bs, and C's for us.
Yeah, and I think your strategy for dealing with those as a sales organization can be quite different, right? If there's an A, they've got a clear problem, they're coming to you, they're saying, I got these 5 questions, can you help me solve this pain? Great, you're reacting to that, and maybe in those cases, being single-threaded is less of a problem. You're going to need to get multi-threaded later in that deal, but on day one, a person at that organization has been implicitly or explicitly tasked with solving that pain. Great, run with that. Whereas if you look at the Bs and you're saying, okay, they have a problem that I can solve, they're just not thinking about it in the right way. I need to get in there and poke people in the eyes until a groundswell builds internally and the team at that organization says, guys, stop. We need to fix this, and here's how we're going to do it. So in those deals, you need to get very multi-threaded very quickly and build that groundswell. So I think to be strategic about it, yes, you need to understand, first and foremost, where's their mindset? And then second, how do I build my web of relationships to guide the internal conversation in the direction that it needs to go?
And that's it. And I did a recent video I put out on LinkedIn about start thinking more like a detective instead of an accountant. Because I think the activity thing has gone way too far. It's the number one thing I hear reps say that's getting in their way of selling versus helping them sell. And it's the number one thing that managers just won't let up on. Number of calls, number of connects, number of conversations, number of meetings, and no focus on quality. But those things have little to no correlation with the closing of a deal.
Yeah, it's very easy to get that. Well, not very easy. Respect for the people that are doing this day in and day out. But yeah, the first meeting is a step on the journey.
Yeah.
it's not a 1 in 10 of these will close unless you've got the rest of the journey really figured out. And usually that involves deep relationships with more than one person, and your raw activity logging is not going to get you there. You need to get that out of the way. I'm a big believer that should be automated. If you want the raw data on who's doing the work, that needs to be automated. But if you want to go further and you want to figure out, do we have the right relationships? Relationships are a back and forth. They decay if you don't manage them. They decay over time. And everything counts. The back and forth on email and social and the meetings and all of the conversations you've had with these people, that's what builds the relationships. And if you're trying to read through 1,000 back and forth emails to figure out who has what relationships with whom, you're just not going to get there. You need that digestion of raw back and forth into, oh, Brian knows Jane really well. Brian doesn't know Paul really well.
Right, and coming up with something to give them, some help, something that they want instead of just something that you want. And
absolutely.
Yeah, and that's probably the number 2 thing that reps are stuck with. Well, what does that mean? Well, I'm sure they need help with something. I'm sure you can help them with something, connect them with other people, fill them in on what's going on in the industry, talk about something that they care about that's adjacent to you and your product, but not you and your product.
And I think that's where, to your point earlier, Brian, on ABM and the sort of new interaction between marketing and sales, it gets really interesting where that sales and marketing alignment is actually built around the message. If you start to see in deal cycles, hey, we do really well with users, we struggle having the conversation with the economic buyers. Well, that's a great opportunity to get marketing involved. How is our message to the economic buyers? How are we presenting that? What do they want to hear? What breakfast seminars are we offering in the cities where our economic buyers are situated? How do we use marketing's ability to craft messages, assets, and events to help us as a sales team get the right conversations with the right people that we need to have happen? And you can have this wonderful opportunity to tie those both together.
And I think the conversation is starting about the quality more than the quantity. It's still just a whisper right now, but I think GDPR, which came out in the spring this year, there's a lot of talk about, email and people's information having to, delete it if they don't give you permission to keep it. You have to tell people, gonna have to tell people how you got their email address. This bombardment of contacts, the 16 touches in 16 days, I think people are starting to come to the realization that that's not helping.
Absolutely, and I think what's interesting is the level that we're at right now is kind of a lack of positive, right? We're doing automated sales outreach, et cetera, and we can look at that and say, wow, we sent 1,000 automated low-value sales spam, and we didn't really get much in the way of results, right? It's a lack of a positive. But I think what's becoming more apparent is there's actually an explicit negative. Now you've taken this set of executive buyers and you have trained them that your brand and your offering is something that they ought to very quickly ignore and delete. And that might be their own sort of, that half a second psychology that we all have of like, oh, that sales outreach, delete it. Or it might be, in many cases, well, when you start deleting and marking as spam all those emails, the algorithm starts saying, oh, sales outreach from this organization, I'm just going to go ahead and put that in the spam folder for you.
Yeah.
And that is a very, very clear and real negative. It's going to prevent your ability to do any form of outreach from that point forward, and it's going to affect your revenue in coming quarters significantly.
That's it. I call it the rep zone, with the analogy of the friend zone in relationships. It's once you're in it, it's really hard to get out. or near impossible.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're like, oh yeah, I know those guys. They send me a bunch of want a meeting, do you really want a meeting emails. So you're not going to read the 14th of those to say, the 14th email has some deep insights.
And that's it. And even when they phony it up, saying that they love your company, your product, your blog post, and then they ask for it, and then you kind of get the sense they just cut and pasted something there, mail merged it. And you're in their cadence. It's barely human touch on it, other than kicking the cadence off, and you don't feel bad for ignoring it or deleting it or marking it as spam. Absolutely,
yeah. That's the fascinating thing about the digital world is for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction, and I think we've trained buyers psychologically to be very quick and merciless on any of that initial outreach unless there's something deeply relevant, deeply insightful, or a social connection. Once you've got that initial, you're single-threaded, you're trying to get beyond that, great, let's drop a name in there. Hey, I'm chatting with Jane. Here's what's going on. Thought we might want to have a chat. And now you've opened up a different avenue of the conversation.
And give the sales leaders a sense of what they would get out of using Nudge and the relationship analytics and how it would help them with their forecast.
Sure. So fundamentally what we're able to offer, because we put all of our energy into tracking and understanding the relationships and what they're made up of, is that foundation that we've talked about today. So the raw, are they doing their work logging? Here's the email sent, here's the emails received, this rep is doing well, this rep's not doing well, these accounts have been touched, these accounts have not been touched. But then the next layer of that is, okay, great. So here's the outreach and the response. Where are the relationships? And for those relationships and the accounts that they're at, do those relationships have strength? Are they very, very weak relationships? Are they starting to drop off? And so that then starts to give you more funnel risk insights. Where are you single-threaded? Where do you have no strong relationships? Where are you dropping balls because you haven't continued to build those relationships in the last few weeks? And then the next layer on top of that is when we start looking at those relationships by who they're with. So do you have the relationships with finance, procurement, marketing, sales? Do you have relationships with individual contributors, directors, or VPs? To give you that insight as you go deeper on individual deals to say what's really going on here. So Nudge has that insight. Nudge will push that insight for you into your CRM, and then from there you're able to look at that data in context of the pipe that you're trying to manage. You can assess risk on the pipe. You can focus your coaching effort in that pipe on the deals or the reps that are struggling, and you can predict much more accurately which of those deals are likely to close and not, and you can coach the earlier stage deals to make sure that they're going to be heading towards a close plan. So it takes activity logging and really steps back and says, what are we trying to solve for? And then moves forward, solving that problem on raw activity, relationships, and who those relationships are with at each account.
Excellent. Hey, Steve, I really appreciate your time today. Where can people go to connect up with you and learn more about your work?
Likewise, Brian, I really enjoyed the chat. We're at Nudge.Ai, and there's a very easy and prominent book a conversation button that I would encourage anyone who's interested in this. The best way to learn about it, honestly, is a conversation where we can show you a lot of good stuff. Just go ahead and click that button and make it convenient for yourself, and we look forward to chatting with you.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening to this episode, and I really would appreciate everybody who goes onto LinkedIn, connects up with me, or follows me there. If you happen to see some of my content flying by, if you could throw a little thumbs up or a comment or a share, I definitely appreciate it. It helps spread the word about the podcast. And make sure you're checking out my website, b2brevenue.com. You can get my free book on how companies make product selections. It's a real book. It is on Amazon, but I give it away for free. Just register there. It'll email you a link to it, and you can just download the PDF from there. Also, if you want to check out the courses, start the conversation, get the meeting, or closing the complex sale, and you have more questions about it, the short answer is there are video courses. You get access for a year, but it's also a community. What does that mean? You can ask questions anytime via voicemail or email. I answer them within a week, put them into the course. We have office hours every other week. It's an hour long course where you can I pick a topic, answer questions, you can ask questions. Also, you can schedule one-on-ones for free, and we just talk through your particular use case, and that gets shared with the course. So if you don't have time for office hours, or the timing doesn't work, or you just want some more one-on-one help, that's all included for a whole year. So it's really a year to go from where you are to where you want to be. And so it's not just videos. It's not just knowledge. It's practice. It's getting feedback. You can send me emails. You can send me your presentation. I'll help you with anything that you need to close the complex sale or get the meeting. And you can check out them at b2brevenue.com. So that's it. I really appreciate it. And please tell somebody about the podcast and let me know if I can help you in any way. Oh, and you want to hear some results from the course? Well, here you go.
You know, I love the approach. It's working for me just fantastic. If I sent you some of the emails, which I should, the conversations that I'm having with people, I think you'd be blown away because they're not really about work. Yeah. I've figured out if you can kind of get personal with them, like one lady, it's all about her family, kids. And then I sprinkled in a little bit around work, and she's LinkedIn, sending me messages on LinkedIn, photos of her family. No, I'm not even kidding. I should show this to you. You'd be stunned. I was shocked. And we're going to lunch on September 6th. And yesterday she shot me a LinkedIn message and said, "Hey, Ron, why don't we get on the phone and do a video call beforehand so our lunch isn't so awkward? We're like barely not meeting each other for the first time." Oh, holy cow, right? Like, this is unbelievable. So this is not the first time that this has happened. She's kind of an extreme, but I'm starting to figure out a pattern where I can actually make this a process, you know? So
good. Yeah.
I'll show you that. So it's getting to that point. And every time I do this, I'm like, God, this is unbelievable, you know? So,
and it feels better too, doesn't it?
Oh, Brian, let me tell you something. To be able to go to lunch with her, I'll even talk to her on the phone, right? We're going to talk about family, kids, work-life harmony, because I shared a thing with her from Bezos about work-life harmony. This is where the conversation will start. Now, at some point, we're both not stupid, right? We know we're going to talk about work. We know why we're both there. Right. But to kick it off this way is so much better. And to end that lunch with the last 5 to 8 minutes of telling, well, what are you guys doing with digital